For millions of people, this is the sound of spring, or summer, or fall, the dreaded allergy season. Pollen, dust, mold, these tiny particles are everywhere, and for those with seasonal allergies, they can turn a beautiful day into a miserable experience. But allergies aren't just about the air we breathe. For many, food is the enemy. A hidden ingredient, a cross-contamination can trigger a life-threatening reaction. So how do we figure out what's causing these reactions? Well, allergy testing can help identify the specific triggers that are setting off the immune system. But to truly understand allergies, we need to zoom in to the microscopic level and look at a specific type of immune cell called a B cell. B cells are a crucial part of our immune system responsible for producing antibodies. Think of antibodies as tiny Y-shaped proteins that patrol our bodies looking for things that could be harmful. In the case of allergies, B cells produce a specific type of antibody called IgE, which stands for immunoglobulin E. Instead of targeting viruses or bacteria, IgE antibodies mistakenly target harmless substances like pollen, pet dander, or peanuts. When IgE antibodies bind to these allergens, they trigger the release of histamine, which causes allergy symptoms. That's where memory B cells come in. Think of them as the allergy alert team, remembering past allergens. The next time you encounter that allergen, these memory B cells quickly trigger the release of IgE, starting the allergic reaction. But that's not the whole story. Scientists are now zooming in on a special type of memory B cell. To break it down, we have Dr. Koenig from McMaster University's Immunology Research Center. What are MBC2 cells and what role do they play in allergies?
MBC2s, or we call them type 2 polarized memory B cells, or some folks will call them memory B cells with type 2 markings. That's another thing that you'll hear sometimes. It's a type of a cell that we knew existed called a memory B cell, but it has a gene program that kind of indicated to us anyway that it is associated with allergic disease. And then we did a whole bunch of other work after that to figure out that that was true. It's a cell that the role that we have found for it, and I'm saying that there are other roles, but we just don't know what they are, is that these cells kind of lay in wait until they see an allergen. And then when they see that allergen, they turn into a cell called an IgE plasma cell. IgE is a type of antibody, and it's the one that makes you allergic. So these plasma cells then release IgE antibodies. And then when you see the food, subsequently, you'll have an anaphylactic reaction. So these are kind of like a reservoir of these really pathogenic cells. And we're hoping if we can get in the way of this reservoir that we would be able to make an impact on the disease and improve the quality of life of people who are allergic.
What is the significance of the MBC2 cell discovery in allergy research?
It's a sizable advance, or at least that's what my colleagues tell me, which is always helpful because really they're the people who determine those things, right, if they use it or not. Some diseases like food allergy or like seasonal allergies are mediated by IgE antibodies. And a big question that was outstanding in the field before we did the work, like what cell type is actually holding that memory of those IgE antibodies? And we didn't really know specifically that there would be a specific cell type, but we uncovered what seems to be like a type 2 immune, which is a fancy allergy way of saying, or immunology way of saying allergic memory B cell, that seems to be very closely connected with that IgE response. And so people making that IgE is what keeps them allergic, and we're hoping if we can get rid of these cells, that then they won't have IgE, and they won't be allergic anymore, and that might be a curative solution in the disease. So
Do MBC2 cells remember allergens and help trigger an allergic reaction?
these cells, called memory B cells, they recirculate throughout the body, and they also live in your tissues. So for example, in your lymph nodes or in your lungs, all kinds of different places. And they're kind of just surveying their environment, waiting basically to see an allergen again. And when they see the allergen, it turns those cells back on. And the first thing they do when they get turned back on is they grow up into a much bigger number, and then they start to turn into other cells. So in this context, they're not the ones that are causing the anaphylactic reactions to foods. What they're doing is they're growing up and then they're turning into a different type of cell, which is called an IgE plasma cell. And those cells are the ones that secrete the antibodies into our circulation and into all of our tissues that cause an allergic reaction. And so that's how the type 2 memory B cell is involved in that process. But the way that the anaphylaxis actually happens is that throughout our whole body, we have these cells called mast cells. They're called mast because the story goes in German, their mast means fat. So they're full of they're big fat cells full of these granules. And on their surface, they bind these IgE antibodies. And when the allergen comes in contact with those IgE antibodies, then the mast cells release all those granules. And those granules have things like histamine, which those in health sci would have learned about in first year, that cause all the signs and symptoms of a reaction. So it deals with your blood pressure, vasodilation, it deals with edema, the liquid coming out of your blood vessels, swelling, urticaria, throat closing, all those things that are involved in an allergic reaction, they're all caused by those granule products from the mast cells. So the way that it causes the allergic reaction itself is indirect. It's the cells replenishing that IgE. But that's the role for the memory B cells, really replenishing those antibodies. Like this, what's really important is to see if other people will find it. And so far that's been happening. There's actually already been some other work beyond ours published on the cell, which is very helpful. The next part is to try and understand, well, okay, we know that this is the cell that's involved, but what's the process of that cell actually becoming the IgE secreting plasma cells that we're finding that cause this disease, right? And the rules for that are not very clear at all. So we don't know which cell types would be involved in that response. We don't know what molecules are needed for that response. And all of those pieces are things that we can get in the way of. So if it's a specific molecule, maybe we block that molecule. If it's a specific cell type, maybe we can target that cell type, right? So I think that there's, a huge amount of stuff that we need to do just understanding the cell. Like, when you just find something, it's obviously going to be some time before you can use it in a therapeutic context. But we're already doing that with some colleagues. We're already trying to target the cells. We're already trying to get rid of them or maybe try and change their mind a little bit. So all of those options are kind of on the table, and we have to be creative with how we're going to use this piece of information to ultimately impact the outcomes in allergic people.